Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. Good to have you with us here on this Friday night, about to be just past midnight on Saturday morning when we approach T0 for this mission from SpaceX. Said to be the 80th Falcon 9 launch of the year, counting down less than an hour remaining till the planned departure of Starlink 10-34, lifting off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, or excuse me, Space Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. There's another Falcon 9 rocket getting ready to lift off tomorrow afternoon, Eastern Time, mid-morning on the west coast from Vandenberg and their Space Launch Complex 4 East. So perhaps my brain was already jumping ahead to that one, but let's not skip ahead of where we are now, which is T-minus 56 minutes, 41 seconds and counting to the planned departure of this Falcon 9 rocket. Bit of a crew shuffle tonight. We've got our John Pisani, who's running the technical operation of the broadcast, and our Stephen Young is going to be performing tracking duties tonight here at the press site. Both our Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane are off this evening. If you're not following the fellows, though, on X, you can find them at their handles here on X. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. Adam at Apron NYC. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. You can find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook as well. Taking a quick peek at the live chat here, I want to thank the little more than 700 of you who are with us at the start of our broadcast tonight. You can do us a big favor and help us out just by clicking the like button, sharing the stream. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. I also want to give a shout out to our wonderful moderators here in the live chat who are helping support us in this live launch coverage. So big thanks to Mark Otto, Clistia Lee, Astro Joe we've got tonight as well. Just scrolling to make sure I'm not missing anybody. If there are any of the other mods that cruise on in during the countdown, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can make their job that much easier just by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you refrain from delving into overt politics and religion, that you hold off from using all caps when you type your message, that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond as appropriate, and most importantly, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. This launch and all of our other live streams are made possible by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like the Rocket Girl, That Opal Guy, Tornadoes Gaming 234, Sulfur for Lunch, Deb Reese, Grandpa Jim Pondu, Butterfly, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discount at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. I want to thank Callistia for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships and growing our community just a little bit more. So to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat if you haven't already. We hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Last little bit of housekeeping here tonight as we get things rolling. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you could use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have those comments or queries elevated for discussion. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. With all that out of the way, let's talk about what we've got on tap tonight. A Falcon 9 rocket launch to kick things off for the weekend with just a hair under 53 minutes to go. SpaceX is preparing to start the tanking process for its Falcon 9 rocket coming up here within the next 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and review our countdown timeline, let you know the milestones that are coming up as SpaceX prepares to load up its Falcon 9 and prepare it for takeoff. SpaceX launch director will generally give their go for the start of prop load 38 minutes before takeoff. SpaceX does this poll electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good posture to do so, it can conduct this a little bit earlier beyond or ahead of the 38-minute mark. But assuming that the go-ahead is given, tanking of a Falcon 9 rocket starts at the T-minus 35 point in the countdown with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene. That happens on board the first and second stages. And liquid oxygen, the oxidizer, is loaded up on the booster stage. At T-minus 30 minutes, first stage cryogenic helium load will begin. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. That helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, we'll see the strong back chill-down process begin. Here at Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, we see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. It's a good visual indication that fueling is moving along on time and as expected. T-minus 16 minutes is when the second stage liquid oxygen loading will begin after the conclusion of the big vent about 30 seconds prior. Moving right along, at the 7-minute mark, SpaceX will begin to flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the 9 Merlin engines, plumbing, and turbopumps, and that'll protect the engines at the base of the booster from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before takeoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. That's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true of the second stage about a minute afterwards, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that Falcon 9 is in startup, means control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and simultaneously the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlins are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Looking at that departure time at 12:26 a.m. Eastern, 04:26 UTC, or in T-minus 49 minutes and 16 seconds. Time now currently T-minus 48 minutes, 13 seconds and counting. As SpaceX is progressing towards the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket here in Florida. On the other side of the globe, down in New Zealand, in the Mahia region, Rocket Lab also preparing for an orbital flight of its Electron rocket. It's preparing for its fastest turnaround of less than 48 hours between Electron flights. That mission for classified or an undisclosed customer is called Symphony in the Stars. Comes after a successful launch of the Get the Hawk Out of Here on behalf of customer Hawkeye 360. The Hawkeye mission included 4 satellites on board that orbital class rocket. The upcoming mission, Symphony in the Stars, has just 1 payload on board. Though again, because it's for an undisclosed customer, Rocket Lab is staying fairly mum about the payload. That mission looking to lift off at 6:45 p.m. New Zealand time. That's 2:45 a.m. Eastern, 06:45 UTC. Rocket Lab will have a dedicated stream of their own for that mission if you care to stay awake for that one. Meanwhile, you can stay right here where you are for live launch coverage with commentary of this mission from SpaceX. The booster that is supporting tonight's overnight launch is tail number 1092. Too fresh in the SpaceX fleet to make a difference as far as the Falcon 9 frequent flyer list. Just giving you a quick refresh of where we stand with the most often flown Falcon boosters so far. Still got that 3-way tie for the 5th spot. Have to wait and see when SpaceX is going to fly one of those again and break that tie for 21 missions apiece between B-10, 76, 77, and 78. Here's where the company stands with its Falcon family launches this year compared to years past. 79 Falcon flights so far in 2025. Again, looking for number 80 coming up in just about 45 minutes from now. A couple noteworthy SpaceX milestones. One a little bit farther out, but let's talk about the chapter that's closing right now or has just passed. It was last week when one of SpaceX's most reliable vehicles, referred to as Megan, which was most recently used to support the recovery of Crew 9, made its departure from Florida's Space Coast. Walking back in time, as described by Kiko Donchev, SpaceX's Vice President of Launch. This particular vessel began as it was brought aboard the SpaceX fleet as Ghost Searcher back in 2016. As it goes through the chronology, it was used to then work on how to recover payload fairings and then was modified for recovery for the Dragon spacecraft. Here it is with a payload fairing half on board. In total, Megan assisted in the recovery of 24 astronauts, making its final mission with the recovery of Crew 9 back in March, surrounded by those dolphins, as we recall. According to Kiko Donchev, Megan has set sail for Louisiana for its retirement from the SpaceX fleet, since the company is now doing all of its Dragon recoveries from the West Coast. The other Dragon recovery vessel, Shannon, is already on the West Coast, having made its first crewed Dragon recovery mission with the splashdown of Fram 2, that commercial astronaut mission that saw those four travel around in a polar orbit. Time now T-minus 42 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. Just about 4.5 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director, nominally speaking, will make the call on the start of prop load today. Time now T-minus 40 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. As we're preparing to see this launch of a Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40, winding the clock back to bygone time, now 10 years ago to the date, coming up here in about 40 or 15 minutes once we turn the clock over, and here on the East Coast it will be June 28th. 10 years ago on this date, that was the flight of CRS-7, an auspicious day in SpaceX history, as this was the in-flight anomaly, as this was a cargo dragon flight up to the International Space Station that suffered an in-flight anomaly where the vehicle ended up breaking apart before the Dragon had a chance to make it up to the orbiting outpost. Ultimately, this in-flight anomaly would result in SpaceX having to not only stand down from launching when come back to the pad for about 6 months, but it was also the turnover of a new block upgrade for the Falcon 9 rocket, a number of changes that came to the vehicle in order to improve its performance and also introduce some of the changes that are still around with the vehicle today, such as introducing a slightly longer second stage and bringing on board use of densified super cold liquid oxygen. As the name of the mission suggested, CRS-7 was the 7th SpaceX mission, sending a Dragon spacecraft up to the International Space Station. Dragon spacecraft at the time had about 4,300 pounds, or about 1,952 kilograms of cargo that were headed up to the station at the time of the incident. Breakup happened a little more than 2 minutes into the flight, which should be coming up here in the next few seconds, as we're just about at the point where SpaceX will be making the call on fueling its real-time Falcon 9. You can see the breakup here in this tracking video captured by NASA 10 years ago on the 28th, which we're just now about 12 minutes from here in real time. I want to go now to some tape from the post-anomaly press conference that happened later in the day on June 28th. The face and the voice will be familiar to those who've been following the SpaceX program, Bill Gerstenmaier, but at the time he was still a very prominent member of the NASA family, serving as the Associate Administrator for Human Exploration and Operations. As they'll note in the beginning of his remarks, as we're just about a minute away from the start of fueling of the Falcon 9 here today, Gerst notes that this SpaceX anomaly back in 2015 came on the heels of a pair of other anomalies.
We started with the orbital loss last fall and had the progress loss several months ago, and now the SpaceX loss. And there's really no commonality across these three events other than the fact that it's space and it's difficult to go fly. We're essentially operating systems at the edge of their ability to perform and operate. This is a very demanding environment, requires tremendous precision and tremendous amount of engineering skill and hardware to perform exactly as it should. The teams will work through this. We'll learn from these events, and I think we'll get stronger from these events. We'll understand what occurred. We'll understand where there were engineering weaknesses. We'll get a chance to see these. The teams will learn from these. They'll take that learning forward. They'll get back ready to go fly, and we'll go back flying again. So the important thing is we stand down just long enough to understand the failure, to internalize the learning, and to move forward. So again, an unfortunate event, but I think it's important for all of us to realize that through these failures and through these events, we can learn more and we can come back stronger and we can get prepared to really keep pushing the envelope as we move into space. You know, it's not easy living on the frontier of space. It's not easy taking care of space station. I think sometimes folks think it's easy and it seems routine, and that's when we get in trouble. It is not easy and it is not routine. The evidence of these last three flights have really shown us the problems that can occur, but it also shows the resilience. If a teams plan ahead and they work ahead, they can be ready to go support.
And again, that was Bill Gerstenmaier speaking following that anomaly now a decade ago. Here on the present day, we're T-minus 33 minutes, 39 seconds and counting. And it does appear as though we're starting just to get our first little inklings of a frost line forming near the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, as SpaceX begins to load that super cold densified liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. In fact, this use of densified liquid oxygen is part of the legacy of that anomaly, as SpaceX took the next 6 months following that in-flight event of CRS-7 to make the block upgrade to the version of the Falcon 9 that we've got sitting in front of us right now. as we're coming up on the T-minus 30-minute mark ahead of the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. If you're just joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 10-34 mission, the flight of 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites up to low Earth orbit after making their departure from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. With the fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket already in swing, that means SpaceX is committing to the current T0 time, the liftoff at 12:26 a.m. Eastern, 04:26 UTC for our friends around the world. And that's because SpaceX is using that aforementioned super cold densified liquid oxygen. They employ a load and go style of fueling, which means that they are tanking the Falcon 9 as close to liftoff as possible. Talking about the weather tonight, a little hard to see any of the clouds that are hanging around just because of the lack of light, of course. But heading into this launch opportunity earlier in the day, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 60% chance for favorable weather during the launch window. That was set to improve to 90% by the window's end. That being said, given that SpaceX is already fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, things may have improved enough that they are confident in going ahead with this launch opportunity tonight at the start of the window. Given also that SpaceX likes to push the envelope and increase their launch cadence and capability for turnaround for future flights, worth mentioning at this point in the countdown that given that they are targeting the start of the window and barring any issues between now and liftoff, once they leave the pad, it will mark the fastest turnaround for Space Launch Complex 40 in its history. Time between the last launch from this launch site and the one coming up here in just about 27.5 minutes will be 2 days, 8 hours, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. And that follows the Starlink 12-16. Or excuse me, the previous record was 2 days, 8 hours, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. And that was set with the launch of the Starlink 12-16 mission on March 15th of this year. The turnaround tonight would be just 2 days, 8 hours, 31 minutes, and 10 seconds. So not a gigantic leap forward, but every new record is certainly notable. Shaving off that much more time means that many more missions can potentially launch in a year. Taking a look at our live chat now, I want to thank the little more than 1,300 of you who are watching with us at this point in the countdown. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank Beth Carlton for a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate that generosity, Beth. Thanks for supporting us tonight. And for another $10 super chat, also from Beth, who says, thank you. Well, thank you, Beth, for your additional support of our coverage this evening. Just hitting midnight now, crossing over into June 28th, Saturday morning here on the Space Coast. little more than 25 minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. At this point, the company is loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels on the vehicle's second stage. Time now, T-minus 24 minutes, 11 seconds, and counting. We mentioned earlier in this broadcast that the Falcon 9 first stage booster supporting this mission is tail number B1092 in the SpaceX fleet, preparing to make its 5th trip to space and back in just a little less than 24 minutes from now. Before we see the start of the big vent as SpaceX prepares to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage, let's talk about that booster for a spell. Give you a brief rundown of its previous flights. Its career began on February 27th with the Starlink 12-13 mission, lifting off from this pad here, Space Launch Complex 40, landing on the other East Coast-based recovery vessel, though. Just read the instructions. Tonight, SpaceX is using the drone ship called a Shortfall Gravitas. Next flight for this booster was the NROL 69 mission, classified payload on behalf of the National Reconnaissance Office that lifted off on March 24th. And that was followed up by CRS 32, or Commercial Resupply Services 32, departing from Slick 40 on April 21st. And then most recently we had the launch of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 8 mission. Adding another satellite to the growing GPS constellation, offering a lot of important uses not only for those of us in the civilian space, but also for the Department of Defense. Taking a peek at our live chat here, I see you've got moderator Jeff Hansen, who's joined us tonight, in addition to Mark Otto, Clistia Lee, and Astro Joe. Good to see you tonight, Jeff. Also, channel member Cumulus Granatus is with us in the chat, able to answer a number of questions that pop in throughout the course of the countdown. Taking a look at some of the comments in the live chat, I see Joshua Snyder is joining us here on vacation in Cocoa Beach. Let us know where you're watching this launch from tonight, whether you're here in Florida or elsewhere around the world. It's always great to check in with our global audience and see where you're hanging out this fine evening. Coming up in just about 10 seconds, we should see the start of the big vent. Good visual indication that fueling is moving along on time and as expected. Chill down ahead of the start of second stage LOX load. And there we see that venting getting underway. Little less than 2 minutes remaining on this venting process. Again, if you're just joining us, you're watching the big vent currently in full swing. This is SpaceX conditioning the feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load on its Falcon 9 rocket. As we're coming upon the final minute of this vent, want to thank channel member Lisa Lynch for a $10 super chat. Appreciate that, Lisa, who says, "So glad to be able to watch this launch live. Missed you all. Let's have a great launch. Watching from Bonita Springs, Florida." Glad to have you back, Lisa. Hope all is well. Just about 30 seconds remaining in this big vent tonight. So far, things appear to be moving smoothly with the countdown of this Falcon 9 rocket as it progresses towards liftoff at 12:26 a.m. Eastern, 04:26 UTC. And with the conclusion now of the big vent, second stage LOX load is beginning. We talked about the countdown timeline at the beginning of the broadcast. Let's pivot now and talk about the launch timeline. This is the sequence of events that we're anticipating with a good and nominal flight of this Falcon 9 rocket this evening. Of course, things will begin with a T0 liftoff at 12:26 a.m. Eastern. Falcon 9 rocket will then pass through max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, about 1 minute and 10 seconds post liftoff. We'll then go through a few events in fairly rapid succession in the 2-minute time frame. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 23 seconds, followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the vehicle's second stage. The payload fairings will be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark. A few minutes after that, the first stage entry burn will get underway. Lasting less than 30 seconds in total, this will bring into play 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, dramatically slowing the vehicle down and setting up the first stage landing burn to begin just before the 8-minute mark. And that's a single engine burn that will bring the booster down for a hopefully soft landing on the drone ship Shortfall of Gravitas. Looking for that touchdown at about T plus 8 minutes and 21 seconds after liftoff. Second stage engine will cut off SECO 1 at about T plus 8 minutes and 40 seconds. The upper stage engine will then go into a coast phase till about T plus 54 minutes and 45 seconds, when there will be a brief 2-second burn on that upper stage engine, setting up the 27 Starlink satellites on board tonight's flight to be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 9 seconds. Just under 13 minutes to go before the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Taking a beat to talk about the payload that's on board. 27 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites are getting ready to head up into low Earth orbit. This launch will be the 59th mission with Starlink satellites as the primary payload. 58 of those have been dedicated Starlink missions, with Starlink 13-1 carrying a couple of Starshield satellites. These optimized V2 minis are considerably lighter than the previously used V2 mini satellite. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use Argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, today the satellites will be deployed at about 172 miles or 277 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. Okay. Ever a busy time here on Florida Space Coast and certainly at the Kennedy Space Center. We'll want to take our eyes briefly away from the Falcon 9 about to fly and look over at the vehicle assembly building, where we're catching a glimpse of a pair of Falcon 9 payload fairings that are making their way by that iconic building. These fairings are carrying aboard a payload that's set to fly coming up next week, looking for a liftoff from Launch Complex 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. This is the Meteosat Third Generation Sounder 1, or MTGS-1 spacecraft. This is a geostationary satellite that's being launched On behalf of the European Organization for the Exploration of Meteorological Satellites, or EUMETSAT for short. Again, this satellite is set to lift off on a different Falcon 9 rocket coming up on July 1st, taking flight from over at Pad 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. That launch window is set to open up at 5:03 p.m. Eastern, 21:03 UTC. We'll, of course, update you with the specific launch time once it has been announced by SpaceX. Just under 9 minutes remaining in the countdown tonight. In the next 2 minutes, when we hit about T-minus 7 minutes in the count, SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. Now T-minus 8 minutes and counting. As we're preparing to see this Falcon 9 rocket take flight, let's take a moment and talk about where this rocket is going to be heading once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket launching on the Starlink 10-34 mission will make an ascent heading northeast once it leaves Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, traveling up along the east coast of the United States. So hopefully the folks in the areas of, say, northeast Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and on up have clear skies and can get a glimpse of this Falcon 9 rocket as it begins its climb uphill. If you yourself are able to capture some photos or video of the Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent, we'd love to see that on social media. Be sure to tag us. You can find us most everywhere, simply at Spaceflight Now. Following stage separation, the first stage booster will target a touchdown on the drone ship, which tonight is a shortfall of gravitas. Falcon 9 booster making its 5th flight. If successful, this will be the 115th booster landing for this particular drone ship and the 469th drone ship booster landing to date, regardless of whether this was using a drone ship or on land. SpaceX also will endeavor to recover the payload fairings after they are deployed from the rocket's second stage. After making their atmospheric reentry, the fairing halves will make their final journey to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. They will then be brought aboard one of the recovery vessels, as pictured here, from a recovery in 2023. They will then be brought back through Port Canaveral here on Florida's Space Coast, turned over to the Hangar X site at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. 5.5 minutes to go now, and we should be getting pad-level views of the Falcon 9 rocket coming up here very shortly. That along with mission audio from SpaceX. Jody Carnival asking if there's going to be a sonic boom tonight. That would be no, unfortunately, for those who enjoy hearing the sonic boom, since the booster is going to be landing well offshore. It shouldn't make an audible impact for anyone on land here in the United States. For those in proximity,
4 strong back retract.
you'll hear a rumble at takeoff, but not a sonic boom per se. As you just heard that call out from SpaceX, they're preparing to start the strong back retract sequence, which will begin with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, large structure beside the Falcon 9 rocket, will recline a few degrees away from the vehicle.
Strong back retract has started.
And as you just heard, that process is now underway. We'll see it do a lean back here in the next few moments. Also saw Aussie Space Girl join us here in the live chat. Good to see you this evening, Stephanie. As you can see, those clamp arms have now opened up, and the transporter erector will pull back now a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Now less than 3 minutes to go. The first stage LOX tank should be full.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Did hear that call out from SpaceX. Same will be true on the vehicle's second stage once we cross the 2-minute mark. As we're approaching liftoff, we will also be joined with tracking assistance by our friends Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with CNJ Images. Less than 2 minutes to go. Second stage LOX load should be complete.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that good call out from SpaceX, the Falcon 9 now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Seeing a little bit of extra venting there in the real-time box. Those are the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX removes the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Ground gas closeouts.
Good call there from SpaceX, approaching the final minute before flight. T-minus 1 minute and counting.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And we are now just waiting for the call from the SpaceX launch director that this vehicle and mission are go for launch.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that call, we are less than 30 seconds away from the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and a liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-34 mission, setting another turnaround record for SpaceX and this launch complex. Now a little more than a minute into flight, Falcon 9 disappearing very quickly into the clouds this evening. Rocket traveling faster than the speed of sound here. We're coming up on the point of max Q with greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. We'll see a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, followed by stage separation, then the ignition of that second stage engine. Payload fairings will be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark. Now 2 minutes into flight.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back ignition.
And good events, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard tracking cameras. Payload fairing jettison will come up next momentarily.
Fairing separation confirmed.
With those fairings now making their way back down towards the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. First stage booster also making its way back, looking for a touchdown on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. A little more than 4 minutes into flight. Booster looks like it's going to be topping out at about 115 kilometers in altitude this evening. follow the live telemetry data for the booster in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Next milestone coming up here will be the start of the entry burn, in which that first stage booster will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines to begin to slow the vehicle down. Now T plus 5 minutes into flight. Sometimes at night you can catch the entry burn happening with our tracking cameras, but given how quickly this rocket disappeared into the clouds following liftoff, I would be surprised tonight if our photographers are able to catch a glimpse of that entry burn. But we know they're scanning the skies on the scant chance that that may happen. Entry burn set to begin just past the 6-minute mark, so in just a few seconds in real time. Entry burn now underway. Oh, yep, there. Pete's got it. Well done, Pete. Just for a second there.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
It's very cloudy tonight.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Coming up, the next milestone will be the start of the landing burn, which again will use just one of the booster's Merlin engines to create a cushioned landing on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. A successful booster landing tonight would not only be the 115th good landing on that particular
Stage 1 transonic.
drone ship, but the 379th drone ship landing to date as well.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And a good 5th landing for Falcon 9 first stage booster B1092.
And back shutdown. Nominal orbit insertion.
And a good confirmation of both engines shut down and that nominal orbit insertion. At this point, the vehicle's second stage will enter into a coast phase until about T plus 54 minutes and 45 seconds. It will then ignite the upper stage engine for a brief 2-second burn, circularizing the orbit, setting up the Starlink satellites to be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 9 seconds post liftoff. And with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, we're going to come to our mission stats as they currently stand. But before we do want to thank a few folks for your support tonight with our launch coverage. Our thanks to Jen for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Jen, who says, watching from St. Augustine, Florida. Love the night launches. Macaw SJ gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Macaw. Good to see you tonight. And thanks for expanding our member community here on YouTube. To our newest gifted channel member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Macaw in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Last but not least for now, I am Lita with a $5 super chat saying hello to Will, team, mods, and Spaceflight Now family. Many thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for all your support, Lita. Good to see you tonight. As we turn to our mission stats, a reminder that we do have another launch past midnight here on the East Coast. I guess I can say later today on the 28th, this time from Vandenberg Space Force Base. That is the Starlink 15-7 mission, which we'll have coverage of beginning about 30 minutes before liftoff. So be sure to subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, and ring that bell so you don't miss out when we do begin our live launch coverage. Bringing it back to this flight tonight, this was the 5th flight of Falcon Booster 1092, marking SpaceX's 497th Falcon 9 launch to date, getting real close to 500. This was the company's 80th Falcon 9 launch of 2025, the 435th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. Today's mission also marked the 148th orbital launch within the last 365 days for SpaceX. This was the 262nd orbital launch from Pad 40 for the company, and the 317th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's a look at the bar chart of Falcon family of rockets years over year. Moving on to some recovery stats. Today's good landing of the booster on the drone ship A Short Fall of Gravitas was the 115th such good landing. That also marked the 379th drone ship landing for SpaceX to date and the 469th overall booster landing as well. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 56th orbital flight from the Sunshine State of Florida, the 85th from U.S. soil, the 94th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 141st orbital launch attempt around the globe. There have been 3 orbital failures on the year so far, and here's where our pie chart now currently stands. The Vandenberg launch, though, won't be the 95th launch from a U.S. rocket company. That distinction, if all continues to go well with their countdown, will belong to Rocket Lab as they prepare to launch their Electron rocket from down in Mahia, New Zealand, coming up here in the next couple of hours. Looking for a liftoff of the mission deemed Symphony in the Stars, a single satellite heading up to a 650-kilometer orbit in low Earth orbit for a confidential customer that's looking to launch. Now, with a new adjusted liftoff time of 7:08 p.m. New Zealand time, that's 3:08 a.m. Eastern, 7:08 UTC for those around the world. So if you'd like to stay up late for that one, Rocket Lab will have their own dedicated live coverage of that mission for you to follow along. We'll be back with you with live coverage of the Starlink 15-7 mission from Vandenberg. a little bit later on today. We want to thank our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for helping us out with tracking assistance today. Thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who is performing the tracking duties here at the press site. Thanks to our John Pisani, who is running the technical operations of the broadcast this evening/morning, however you want to think about it. Big thanks to our moderators in the live chat who have been hanging out and helping us out as well. To Clisty Lee, Jeff Hansen, Aussie Space Girl, Mark Otto, and Astro Joe. Thanks to all of you for being here with us tonight, and to Cumulus Granatus for answering some questions in the live chat. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from this evening. We certainly appreciate your time and attention and being with us here at Spaceflight Now for your live launch coverage needs. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I am Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.